This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Special edition of the Baseline NBA podcast as we are into day 2 of the NBA free agency. Free agency officially started on July the 1st. And, man, based on some of the stuff that we discussed already in our previous show, you can clearly see that there's so much more that still needs to be looked into with reference to the fallout regarding the big names moving elsewhere. That especially being LeBron James moving to the Los Angeles Lakers. And so it just leads to for us to imagine, what's the fallout going to be. And to discuss all of that, hey, man, I got to do it with my right-hand man, 50 grand, NBA aficionado, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my partner in crime, Warren Shaw, ripping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. So many storylines derived from what's happened in the last 48 hours, man. It's just absolutely phenomenal, brother.
You're 100% correct, Bray. And, salute to all the fans listeners of NBA Baseline. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sticking through, the trials and tribulations that has been NBA free agency thus far. But we're going to discuss the yin and the yang, whereas one team is lauded and gets the crown jewel and a first ballot Hall of Famer, transgenerational type player. There's another team that's left with a hole as a result of that. So we need to discuss what's going to happen with the Cleveland Cavaliers in lieu of LeBron James leaving them for a second.
Oh my God, a hole? More like getting lost in the quantum realm, man. Like, what I'm saying? They're gonna need Hank Pym to pull the Cleveland Cavaliers out of what could be 30 years more of purgatory. The way that, but we'll
get about it like they're the Browns.
we'll get into that in a little bit. Listen, with championships there comes a price, and again, we'll get into that. It's interesting. Shaw, you actually brought this up. I don't know if I should be happy that we're doing this, or I should be mad at you that we're up in the wee hours of the morning, even having this part of the conversation, but it should be had when we're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers and their future based on the decision of LeBron James. Also in the show, we're going to have on our segment of the drop, we're going to discuss Summer League. Obviously it's not just always about the free agent signings. There is a Summer League that still has to be played. And it's going to be interesting because, again, the Summer League has been a very, very popular trend during the summer. It's been getting a lot of allure, not just on the court, but off the court as well, too. So what comes of it for this year's Summer League and the drafts selections that have taken place? What can we expect? We'll definitely get into that. So a lot of good things happening. Once again, be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. All you got to do is download that platform, look us up, hook on, and allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things happening in the association. You know how we do, and you know how we roll. Time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it down.
To the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And the topic of conversation is the Cleveland Cavaliers. No, this is not going to be one of our previews for a basketball team for the upcoming season, although we can preview that there will be some hardships that the Cleveland Cavaliers are likely to endure now that LeBron James has made his decision and is elected to go play for the Los Angeles Lakers.
In some ways, I feel like we're digging up the body again and going through the autopsy report all over after we just put them in the ground and put the scalpels out and thought we were done with the 17-18 season. Now we kind of have to go back in here and just, all right, we got to do some more dissecting now after LeBron leaves them. We're finding out, their death is death by LeBron as opposed to the Golden State Warriors.
Listen, it could have been well said. It couldn't be any better said than how you just put it, man. I just so there's certain facets to this, right? And I alluded to this just before we jumped on to doing this breakdown. When it comes to winning a championship, how you go about winning this championship may dictate how long it's going to take for you to be a sustainable franchise for the years to come. All teams are going to go through a spell of struggling to compete um, and play at a high level. We're seeing it with the San Antonio Spurs. We've seen it in the last couple of seasons with the Memphis Grizzlies. We've seen it with the Miami Heat. All have been sustainable basketball teams that you can make an argument over the last 10 years have been very successful basketball teams. And when we talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, they have been one of those type of teams. And I guess the best way to correlate them for me when I think about this is outside the realm of the NBA because of the uniqueness of what's been going on with Cleveland. I relate them to the Florida Marlins. And, a lot of people have always questions like, what is the legitimacy of the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA? Are there really NBA fans out there? What would signify the fact that it's been worth this effort of what Dan Gilbert has gone in this 15, 16-year window, so to speak, about getting this basketball team one championship. And you can make the argument that Dan Gilbert bought himself a championship when LeBron decided to come back, regardless of how that has played out. But maybe in the long term, when you talk about the NBA being one of those unique sports businesses in itself, that it's worth that the juice is worth the squeeze. But now I think we're going to see the ugly side of what's happening here with reference to having LeBron James back around a second time, and for all of this effort, only having one championship to speak for.
They would do it again, though. I mean, really and truly, the taxes that they've paid, the salary, the inflated salaries that they're even stuck with, even with LeBron opting out of a $35 million deal that would have paid him for next season, still leaves the Cavs over the tax threshold. Over the hard cap. And with $110 million roughly in payroll without LeBron on the roster. But again, because when you have LeBron, your ticket sales go up. Your basketball revenue goes up. In just general, you're in the playoffs, so you're all of that stuff is going to allow you to make an excess. I think Ramona Shelburne had said something to the fact that LeBron just brings your franchise an extra $60 million a year just by virtue of him just being there once he signed his name on the page. So I think they would do it again. But the question is now he's not there, and what do you do? They've come out and said through the media that Kevin Love would not be on the trading block, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. It's just yes, you can try to compete in a weaker Eastern Conference, but if LeBron had to drag this team kicking and screaming to the NBA playoffs, I mean, and ultimately to the NBA Finals, you don't have that anymore. Kevin Love is not dragging that team, to even maybe a 7 or 8 seed in the Eastern Conference. And if he is, is that something that you even want to be a part of? So I feel like there's going to be some shifting when it comes to the Kevin Love conversation. But you do wonder what they're going to do with, Kyle Korver, a very manageable deal, and can go help a lot of contenders that are out there. You wonder what's going to happen. Do they try to bring back Rodney Hood, or do they just go ahead and hand the keys to their new rookie point guard, Colin Sexton, and say, "Hey, kid, lead the way here for us"?
Well, we've seen how that has played out already once before when LeBron originally left. Tried to hand the keys over to Kyrie Irving. I mean, so let me go back to one point that you made, Shaw. I completely agree with you. If you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, you do this deal with the devil, unfortunately. Um, and I say that with respect to the fact that if part of this is because of the owner, Dan Gilbert, and how he laid this all out. He basically put the franchise in a Johnny Cage position, so to speak, or Johnny Blaze position, so to speak, right? That they had to make this deal with the devil to kind of wipe the egg off their face. Most other franchises pretty much still go through the motions, and somewhere along the lines, they figure out a way to put together a championship team and sneak in there and do something that I don't think a lot of people expected them to do. Ergo, the Detroit Pistons in the early 2000s. Okay. But when I think about this situation, I'm talking about how this is impacting the Cleveland Cavaliers from an executive standpoint. Because at the end of the day, Shaw, when a player like LeBron James leaves your franchise, you're supposed to feel good about the direction of the franchise moving forward. And a lot of that comes down to who is still running that show. And it's the same cast of characters. The only difference is rather than it being a David Griffin as the general manager, it's a nuanced person, not nuanced, but a rookie like type person in Kobe Altman. And if you're a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I don't know how you feel encouraged by that, right? You want to ride off of the momentum that you got something significant that you can hold on to. But that if you're going to endure this kind of misery again, that it's with you seeing that the organization understands what they need to do moving forward. And I don't think that they've learned their lesson the second time around. And I think that is where the problem lies when you talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, much better response by Dan Gilbert to LeBron James. I would expect that. But it still does not answer the question or basically show me what the elephant in the room is have you learned your lesson the first time around when you went through this endeavor? And I just don't know if whether or not he has or hasn't. And a letter is not going to dictate that. I think it's going to come down to the logic and the plan and the blueprint moving forward and being committed to it, and not doing this thing half-heartedly like they attempted to do when they had all of these draft picks. And by recognition, Kyrie Irving, great selection, no question. But he did nothing in Cleveland, right? Until LeBron got there. Who's to say that the Kyrie Irving that we're talking about right now becomes this kind of Kyrie Irving that the Celtics have inherited, not going through what he went through, being a successful cornerstone franchise player for a basketball team? So that's what I mean when I say, yeah, they'll do it all over again. But obviously, it could be at a very, very lengthy cost for another generation to suffer with the Cleveland Cavaliers not being a relevant basketball team.
Well, and you're right, but they do have to make a quick decision whether or not they want to be middling, next year, and then sacrificing in some ways. I believe it might have been the Kyle Korver deal itself. I don't remember exactly, but their 2019 first round pick belongs to Atlanta, and is top 10 protected. So if it lands in the top 10, they get to keep it. So with LeBron out, well, I mean, you could say maybe they can keep Kevin Love and still maybe get into the top 10, and still be a lottery team. But if you don't have Kevin Love, that possibility becomes even more realistic that you're going to end up keeping your pick. So that's why I feel like, they're like, it's kind of just fluff right now. There's just no reason for them to not move on from Kevin Love, because he can opt out in the following season anyway. What are you doing? Get some assets if you possibly can for it. Then that allows you to potentially be bad and get into the top 10 of next year's draft, because they made this deal with the Boston Celtics and trading Kyrie Irving, and they thought that Brooklyn pick was going to be a lot more valuable than it turned out to be, and Brooklyn ended up being better. And hey, they ended up with number 8 instead of something in the top 4 or so. So I don't think you take those chances at all. I think you go ahead and realize, cut your losses and be bad so you can eventually try to get good. And you're going to have to do that through the draft, because unfortunately Cleveland is not a destination franchise. And with the culture that is there, or now the lack of culture that's there without LeBron, I don't think you're going to be getting a lot of free agents. So you're going to have to build through the draft for sure.
Damn, Shaw, it sounds like you should be the general manager for this basketball team, not Kobe Altman.
Well, I mean, Kobe did a great job. You know what I'm just saying? But I mean, this is just logic and common sense when you really look at it and what it boils down to. So,
right, but we're talking about this as if the Cleveland Cavaliers have exhibited a level of common sense after these type of situations. And look, I don't know what you necessarily go off of, except for how they have handled themselves in the past. And Kobe Altman might not have been there. He might not have been the GM, but Dan Gilbert still was the damn owner, right? And last time I checked, Kobe Altman doesn't own the Cleveland Cavaliers. He manages the Cleveland Cavaliers. So he still has to listen and heed to what Dan Gilbert wants as far as the direction goes. I guess to me, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I just, again, my concern and emphasis is that the perception that people who support this Cleveland Cavaliers basketball team have to really look in the mirror and say, were you really supporting the Cleveland Cavaliers, or were you supporting LeBron James? And that is a hard thing to absorb for a franchise like the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have had years of success and have also had many years of not being successful. And you can relate that to a lot of their sports clubs that they have out there. But the one consummate is that you can do in the NBA that maybe other organizations and franchises may take years to do, is if you have the right organizational pieces in place, you can turn things around. The NBA there's enough opportunity and chances and to develop the talent or go through the free agency. And Cleveland is not a free agency destination type place. However, a lot of that is alluded to the fact that now that we are living in a time where where small markets doesn't almost really even exist, if you do right by some of these players will enable you to have a quote unquote free agency cash say. You do right by the Colin Sextons and the Kyrie Irvings and these type of guys that have to shoulder a franchise after a marquee player leaves, or maybe even a Kevin Love. You do right by these players and they may be more committed to come and stay and weather that storm with you rather than always alluding to the idea that you've got to bail on that game plan the minute a LeBron James leaves your faction.
Well, I don't think you're wrong in that regard. It's interesting though when you look at the roster. They have so much money tied up in guys like George Hill. George Hill's owed $37 million over the next 2 years. I mean, that's just astronomical. Tristan Thompson, $35 million over the next 2 years. You know, JR owed $29 million over the next 2 years. And then Clarkson is owed $25 million over the next 2 years. Like these are just not good basketball players, you know, especially without LeBron there to kind of carry them along. In addition to Kevin Love and the $50 million he's owed, but again, a player option that he'd probably not take the following season. It is interesting though in terms of like who they're going to try to build around with Sexton there. I know in our previous show we kind of said in jest or in passing, you know, how much can Larry Nance be a part of this future in this team? And you know, I think again he's a rotational piece and can be an energy guy and somebody that the crowd loves. But the question now turns to Rodney Hood, and he's somebody that they try to unlock his potential. Again, long stated what my feeling is on him, but there's a very good possibility that Cleveland now becomes his home as they try to rebuild and do something. Because again, they are going to have hard time getting free agents, even when they do have money, especially with the way the organization has been run. And one thing is going to come of this as well too, as we said before. Ty Lue is now going to earn his stripes. Really and truly, we're going to see what he's made of. Can he coach this mediocre bunch of dudes in the same way that Spoelstra has with the Miami Heat and get them to be competitive in some form or fashion? So there are a lot of great questions that I think we're going to get some answers to as the Cleveland Cavaliers now have to move on without LeBron James.
One thing that definitely has not been addressed is the way that LeBron James just absolutely dismissed the rookie's plea to stay. I mean, listen, Colin Sexton is like, hey, man, LeBron, let's do this again, man, baby.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
You know, and LeBron's like, who? What's your name again, son? It's like, I mean, listen, listen, don't follow Cal savagery here, but I'm just saying, Colin Sexton could have been sitting out in front of that, you know what I'm saying, in front of that the LeBron mansion out there in Cleveland while the moving trucks were pulling up. He's like, yeah, can I get that meeting with LeBron before Magic Johnson does, man? So it's like
Colin Sexton would have been, you know, the ultimate recruiting tool to keep LeBron in Cleveland. You know, that would have really been something. But you know,
we knew that there was something special about him in that 8th pick, man.
He tried. You know, it's a good old college try, and I salute him for it. I mean, you got to make the pitch. I think the interesting thing too is, you know, from the Cavaliers' perspective, is that from all reports, although LeBron did consider them, you know, and considered returning, he didn't even give them a meeting. The way it went down is that more or less the Lakers came in or Magic Johnson swooped in. I think his people still might have met with Philadelphia, and that was it. Cleveland didn't really have a chance to pitch him to come back.
Can I interject something on that point you just made, Shaw, real quick? Don't you think that it's interesting how this may have played out? You know, one of the things that we said about LeBron is that he does factor his family's. He says he wanted his family's decision in this to be a more major factor in what he was planning to do. Don't you find it interesting that they didn't even take a meeting with Cleveland so that his kids and his wife had no qualms being like, baby, this will always be home, but we ain't got to stay at this home. Right. Like, I just feel like, and again, I emphasize this by not saying to make it sound like, oh, you know, he just basically threw up middle fingers to Cleveland. I think what I am trying to say, though, is that while we all made this a big deal about, you know, LeBron wanting to see his kids, play in the area that he grew up, and this is home for these kids, and da 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 da. Clearly, the kids had an equally, you know, good foundation growing up, doing their thing in Los Angeles, and that he has no problems. They have no problems with their lives being out there in the West Coast. I think, there was a few Instagram shots of LeBron James. I think it was down in Miami, and I think there was also out in Los Angeles of his sons out there competing, where a lot of those major tournaments and games are being played at and things of that nature. So I mean, again, I allude to the fact that I think that we're at a different stage of looking at LeBron James, and LeBron James understands this. And I think that that certainly had to be considered and why he chose not to have that meeting with Cleveland, and why I don't think there was any indication that he wanted to stay and play for the Cleveland Cavaliers another, additional years. I just didn't see that that was a viable option for the type of man that he is, and what he's basically gone through over the last 4 years.
And that makes some sense in essence why he didn't even get him the meeting. Like there was just no conversations to be had. It's reported that he called Dan Gilbert, the night before, and at least let him know that he wouldn't be returning there. Didn't let him know that he'd be going to LA for sure, but said he wouldn't be returning. So they were aware, and understood it. But I think if you're a Cavaliers fans, as we alluded to on our previous show regarding LeBron actually going to LA, just the fact that he went there and he's signing for, committing for basically for the rest of his playing career, while Cleveland had to struggle with, the 1+1, each time. It was hard, but at the end of the day, he brought a chip there. And he's going to have his number and his jersey retired there at some point as well too. So the Cavaliers just got to figure out what's their best move now, to get back up this mountain in some form or fashion, because the East is wide open. But I don't think you take a middling chance next year. You just go ahead, be bad. Hopefully you can get a high draft pick, bring somebody in, and start to develop some young talent. And then you just never know what happens in free agency. In 2019, where there are a lot of guys, and while I know we just said they're not a destination place, if Cleveland's a roster that continues to have money, they may have to do kind of what Brooklyn was trying to do and overpay for a couple guys, but do that on some short-term deals so that you can try to build and show that you're willing to do it again, even after the LeBron James era has ended.
You brought up you brought up how Tyronn Lue is going to have to earn his stripes, and I think as well too, Shaw, that's pretty important is the relationship between Tyronn Lue and Kobe Altman, because if I'm Tyronn Lue, I think I would be fighting for Kevin Love to still be on this roster. And if I'm Kobe Altman, I agree with you. I think that you need to figure out a way to move Kevin Love and get some additional pieces. Um, Put yourself in a much better position where maybe you could possibly even, I'm not saying tank, but certainly if the roster and the talent does not match up to them being a competitive basketball team in the Eastern Conference, that you increase the probability of the value of that draft pick, by where you place your finish, right? That you got from Atlanta. I I can't. It's interesting because when I think about Tyronn Lue and he's supposed to be a player's coach, how much of this are you fighting for the sake of that basketball team? How much are you fighting for this for the sake of your basketball career as a head coach? Um, there's only so many head coaches that know how to balance that. Some they are fully vested in going down with the ship. Others, they're about survival and they'll do whatever is necessary to survive. So it'll be interesting to see how Kobe Altman looks at especially since Tyronn Lue got the contract extension. It'll be interesting how Kobe Altman and his relationship with Tyronn Lue will translate to Tyronn Lue's relationship that he has with his players.
Yeah, very, very good points. And as you're making those points, I also kind of just start informally wondering where could Kevin Love go, in a deal that would make sense for him from a player standpoint, and a team that I think would be trying to win, so to speak, as well. There's not a whole lot of great options out there right now on its face. But I think that's going to be up to Altman and the Cavs to kind of figure that out, and see where there's a fit, where teams have assets and will be willing to give some stuff up. Off the top of my head, I think if Cousins leaves New Orleans, then maybe that's a suitor potentially. We know Phoenix has long been interested in Kevin Love as well too, so that might be something where they can even get some young guys back. Maybe they can turn Marquise Chris into something, Dragan Bender into something. TJ Warren and some of those guys in some sort of a deal. Maybe that's a place. that he could go. I think Portland would have some interest as well too. I know he's from the West Coast area and has some ties to Portland. I know he's from LA or whatever, but has some ties out there as well too. So I think there's a market, and they just got to decide what they'd want to do if anything. But again, as we sit here and record, they're like, oh, we're not going to move him. But we'll see what happens in a couple of days once the it starts to sink in that LeBron is no longer coming back through that door to help them and drag them to the playoffs.
Before we jump off our breakdown topic, you bring up a very interesting thought for me to throw this question out here for you, Shaw. Where would you like to see Kevin Love play? Not necessarily where you think that he should go, but where would you like to see him play if it's not going to be with Cleveland?
I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer like directly to that. I mean, like I said, I just mentioned, I think Portland would be a very interesting fit for what they can do. Indiana, I think, would be an interesting fit as well too. For where they're going. You'd wonder if a team that just never doesn't seem to get anybody to ever come there. In Utah. We talked about the fact that they could be looking at more stretchy type fours to space things out for Gobert. And I think that'd be a nice place for him where he could potentially go as well too. But just do they have the requisite assets in essence that would be able to be offered to Cleveland in a deal? I think Charlotte would be interested, but unless they're getting Kemba Walker back, and then why are you bringing Kemba Walker there if you have Colin Sexton? Like that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But I think if there was a team, if I'm just going to say, okay, where would I want to see him go? I think Portland probably stands out to me as the best fit and the place that they could really use him. There or Indiana. I don't know. Do you have a spot as well too that you're thinking about? I mean, not gonna say Houston or something like that, right?
No, I was thinking Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, we've said this numerous times. They needed an upgrade in that front court. Um, I think that Kevin Love's um, a, you know, ability to probably go back to playing in that low post type game, his improved 3-point shooting. Toronto Raptors, again, while they have been a much improved basketball team, they still lack the requisite shooting skills at times. To have a stretch guy that can shoot the basketball with conviction, because you certainly don't get that with Serge Ibaka. To get a guy like that, I think would be a great pairing. Lowry, DeRozan, and Kevin Love. I would have believed that in that pairing a heck of a lot more than I would have believed in the pairing of Lowry, DeRozan, and Serge Ibaka. So that to me would, but I like that the destination you selected, Shaw, in Portland. Look, his family is out there, right? He's not far from the LA area. Um, and I like him being with that solid backcourt combination. I think he's that complementary kind of player that helps backcourts become legitimate threats. Um, and their styles of offense, I think, cater to what the way we want to see Kevin Love playing again. Listen, with all due respect, we don't talk about this enough, and I think this is part of the reason why any move that Kobe Altman makes for Kevin Love, they need to do a better job of playing up the asset that Kevin Love truly was for the Cleveland Cavaliers and the significant contributions that he put forth to help them win that championship over the last few, that one championship over the last few seasons. I'm not saying he was, more significant than Kyrie Irving or that, he would have done anything significant without LeBron James. But what I'm saying is that it took a lot for Kevin Love to basically become the third wheel in that cog. And he basically changed a lot of how he was coming up in the NBA, playing through Minnesota to be a part of this system, which shows me that he has versatility. And that versatility speaks volumes when we talk about big men and their place in this on starting rosters. And you'd be hard pressed to find me another big man that's going to do what Kevin Love has been doing over the last 4 years and still be young enough that he can turn around and play his old game again if necessary. He just needs to find the right coach to help him flip that switch back again.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, I think there'd be no shortage of suitors. As we discussed it, I think OKC would be very interested. Obviously, we're not sure what they're doing with Carmelo as of yet, but I think he and Russell Westbrook get along famously after being teammates at UCLA. So I think that's something that Russ would definitely entertain if Love wanted to go there as well too. Then you got all kinds of pipe dreams you could throw out there. I mean, Minnesota needs a power forward, but how they fit that, in terms of from a financial standpoint, I think the Miami Heat would be interested as well too. But what are they really going to do with it? So there's a lot of teams where he can go and be successful. But it really is dependent like who has something that Cleveland's going to want back. Again, typically in these situations, you want to get young players and potential draft picks, and not all those situations lend to that. Like Portland, especially, you're not. Maybe you're taking CJ McCollum back or something like that, but that seems to be counterproductive to what Portland would be trying to do. Phoenix really seems to be like the best fit that would be able to offer both in terms of picks and some young talent that Cleveland could potentially maybe develop into something moving forward.
All right. Well, we're now gonna have to keep our eye on the Cleveland Cavaliers and where their future lies post the LeBron James era part deux. But like we said, let it not be said. Kobe Altman, Tyronn Lue, Dan Gilbert. Now it's their move, and the Cleveland fans, I'm sure, are gonna be ever grateful for what LeBron James has done. And I'm sure that they're going to be anxious to see how the Cleveland Cavaliers move forward. Now that LeBron James is gone and has taken his talents to Los Angeles. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, The Baseline NBA podcast. This week on The Drop, man, it's about that time. It's like 150 degrees up here north, so clearly I'm already talking to you. It's about that time for break out the ACs. But it's much hotter in the NBA because it's summer league time. And why is it that we're talking about it in this kind of manner? Listen, the NBA Summer League over the last couple of seasons has continued to increase in attendance and in popularity. And maybe it's because of some of the talent that's going to be on display. We've seen it last year with the hype, the machines, when we're talking about guys like the Kyle Kuzmas, the big cats, when they come out and perform, the Lonzo Balls, right, and Jason Tatum's. A lot is to be said about this year's class coming in. So obviously we're doing the deal again in Utah. The Summer League begins July the 2nd to July the 5th. But this time around out in Nevada, where it's all good out there, you know what I'm saying? That's where the showtime happens, and it's not in LA. July 6th to the 17th in Las Vegas. All 30 teams will be participating in the NBA Summer League, Shaw, and we have to be excited about that. It looks like everybody's gearing up to put all of their talent out there on display and show us what they got.
Yeah, Summer League is always an amazing time, and yours truly will be out there for a little bit. First couple of days, I'll be checking out some of the action, especially the first opening weekend. I think I'll be at those games. Definitely want to see, the Marvin Bagleys, take on the DeAndre Aytons and all of that. But I think I'm most interested, as we jump into this here, in actually seeing Mo Bamba.
I was just about to bring that up, man. I want to see Mo Bamba in this, bro.
I'm very excited about, the prospects of him playing and what that's going to look like on a pseudo NBA stage to some degree. Also, obviously Jackson and Trae Young and all those guys as well too. But just the culture that's around NBA Summer League, where all the players or all these other players are there, all the coaches and general managers are kind of there having a good time as well too. 1,001 events take place around Summer League. Our guy David Vogel from the Coaches Association, he's going to be out there. They're going to be redoing the e-coach situation out there with some of their guys too. So there's just a lot of great activity that's involved with Summer League in general. I'd encourage as an NBA fan, if you've never been out there, definitely stop by for a couple of days. You don't need to be out there for 11 days. 2 or 3, even 2 to 4 days. I think is good enough to take in some of the action, and you get a good taste of what's going on in the NBA.
I mean, last year the NBA Summer League set records in attendance. Over 127,000 people attended. One of a single day attendance of around 17,500. And listen, if we're not talking about the hype machine that is the NBA Summer League with some of the young talent and the way social media platforms has elevated over 436 million video views. So that to me is already telling me that the spotlight is going to be on some of these guys, and the IG front is going to be on fleek come that, that stretch, the period of games that are going to be played. One of the things I do think that has to be also emphasized about this, Shaw, is this is the coming of the coming of the two generations, so to speak. It's the premise of the preface, so to speak, for us to be able to see some of the guys that have always been there 4 or 5 plus years. They come out to the NBA Summer League, and some of the nuanced kids, the rookies, they are coming out there. And this is an opportunity for them during this offseason period to talk, to chatter it up, to get some stuff going. I would love to see some of that smack talk going with DeAndre Ayton and Joel Embiid, Mo Bamba, getting all up in Joel Embiid's grill if he's going to be out there to participate. So there's a lot of things that can happen on the court and off the court that really can help elevate our excitement and expectations moving forward into this upcoming season.
I think it's a great point, really and truly. As you alluded to, there's just so much culture, that's NBA culture, that's associated with summer league, and everybody is there. Like I said, even if they just stop in for a couple of days or so, then there's going to be the consistent free agency signings that are taking place, and the first day you can actually sign is going to be when summer league starts. So all that and trade conversations, like it's just a great atmosphere, and then you're going to be seeing GMs talking up in the rafters, and you're going to be like, okay, well, that Danny Ainge is over there talking to Sam Presti. Do they have something working? I mean, those are the types of things that happen in Las Vegas because everyone is just there, and it does kind of smooth negotiations out a little bit because you can just do some things face to face that maybe some of the expressions and some of the conversations you can't have over the phone that don't come across in the same way that they need to. Vegas just represents an amazing time that's going to be out there. And one of the things, and I'll even talk a little bit more about some of the players I'm interested in seeing as we're recording. Something comes across the wire. Celtics, who got very quote unquote lucky on letting Robert Williams slip to them, he now has missed his flight to join his first summer league practice. So in addition to snoozing through his first ever press conference, Danny Ainge calling him and this dude's just fast asleep, he's now missed a flight in order to get out to the Boston Celtics. Their first summer league practice is going to be taking place out there. So all those, that's just some of the rumors and things that are going to be happening. We're going to have those conversations and actually see what he can do when he gets on the floor as well, too.
Yeah, well, he's definitely not making me look good, man. Here I am in some foreign country wondering if this dude was going to be drafted come draft night for the Celtics and thinking, hey, this could be a good get for us. And my man is snoozing through press conferences and can't even get on the damn. Does he need me to be his travel assistant, his travel agent, to make sure that he's on point with this nonsense, man? I can't believe that we got to start doing this for some of these rookies, bro. It's unbelievable, man.
This guy, already just not a good start for a guy who had character concerns and some injury concerns coming in as well, too. But now you're starting to see the character issues really portray themselves within the first week and a half without him even actually touching the basketball and donning a Celtics uniform.
He's pulling a Geno Smith on me, man. And you know what I'm saying? I never knew and didn't care much for Geno Smith, but I'm just saying, this is just, it's not brutal. A good look, bro. It's kind of brutal. All right, let's because we only have so much time allotted. We can't spend it on such foolishness like this, okay? Here's the other thing that I really think that is important to think of as well regarding the NBA Summer League. Two things. Number one, this really does give a great opportunity for assistant head coaches to kind of show us their skill set, their fervor, development, their ability to coach. Let's not take this lightly. While this is about some of the younger talent that's out there performing, I think the other aspect of this is the younger talent of the coaches coaching. And these guys are going to be building relationships with some of these rookies heading into the season, which I think is going to be critical to whether or not we're going to be talking about these being premier rookies with those upsides, or clearly they're going to be diminished returns on whatever it is that they're going to prove to be come this upcoming season. And the other thing that I think is important as well too, Shaw, and it just can't be forgotten because, part of what we do is cover things about the NBA. There are going to be guys from the G League that's going to be part of some of these summer league teams. And we have seen where the G League has had an impact on the NBA. There have been some key pickups through the summer league in starting rosters for teams that have now elevated themselves to being key role players, bench guys for playoff bound teams. Don't be surprised if you see some of these G League guys licking their chops, ready to welcome some of these rooks to the real NBA through the summer league.
Right, it's a complete proving ground, really and truly. And there are guys who always inevitably stand out, even if it doesn't get them an NBA deal. It may get them at least an NBA training camp invite, and that lets you see it. Maybe another team sees you at some point, or it does. Maybe it bolsters your credentials, so to go overseas and make a lucrative money over the course of a year or two, and then eventually come back and hone the skills. One other thing too about summer league, which I always find interesting too, is that it's also a training ground for the league to try some new rules. And this year they're going to experiment with the challenge flag, so to speak, where coaches will be able to, hey, I'm going to challenge this play and not have to wait necessarily for the last 2 minutes of a quarter to go ahead and make a challenge. And I think this is something that it could be impactful. You don't know how soon or fast to be able to implement it, even if it goes well. But I think this is one of the reasons that Summer League is just so great, because it allows the league to kind of look at all kinds of different things when the games don't necessarily matter as much, and then be able to take that back to the rules committee and see what they can do to better the game in the regular season.
Not to be petty, man, but I hope they actually have flags that you can use, that you can wave, kind of like a masquerader, Mardi Gras, Carnival. You know what I'm saying? Because listen, man, there's nothing that I like better than seeing these head coaches run up and down along the baseline, um, you know, like all the way all up onto the other side of the opposition teams. You know what I'm saying? Just to call a play out or something like that. Wouldn't it be great if they actually want to actually challenge a play, that they got to run up there waving the flag and stuff like that, literally trying to run over everybody just to get the play reviewed and stuff. I just think it would be awesome, man. If they just throwing little beanie bags and stuff like that on a basketball court, man. That's not fun.
Dangerous.
Yeah, and it's dangerous, man. It's dangerous. I would hate for Robert Williams to be snoozing and then sliding his foot along the bag, simply because he wasn't paying attention when the Celtics need to actually challenge a call. Like, I just don't think that it would be a good look.
No, not at all, not at all. But it will be interesting to see how they do it. Like you said, is it like a soccer thing, and they pull up the red card or something like that? So you're like, who knows?
Or draw the virtual box to say, let's take it to the Secaucus, right? So,
man, real talk. Yeah, like how will they stop play? You have a challenge play, and then the other team is inbounding the ball, and then how exactly is that going to work? Because it's not like football where there is a lot of stoppages and something like that. I heard some crazy stat the other day that in a football game there's only like, I don't have it correctly, but in an actual football game there's only like 4 minutes of actual play because of all the lining up and people like hut one, hut two, blah 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 blah, and subbing people in and out. The actual game plays only like 4 minutes of game time. That was shocking to me, a little bit for America's favorite sport to like realize you only see real, a limited amount of playtime in the quote unquote 60 minutes they play on a regular and every game basis. Wasn't that shocking to you a little bit?
Yeah, man.
Surprised me a lot.
It surprises me. I give the referees, the line judges, a lot of props in soccer and football. They move players around exactly where they need to be. They spray chalk where they're allowed to kick, all of this stuff. And I'm like, damn, we can't even get these guys on instant replays to do things in less than a minute and a half, and they've got 15 different angles. So it'll be very interesting to see how they do this, the efficiency of the challenge. I think it's definitely merited. I think it's necessary. I think it adds an element now, for coaches who really want to, piss and moan about, certain calls not being made. And, here's an opportunity to exact or reverse a call that they think should be called, depending on the parameters of what happens. And I think the Summer League is a great way to kind of test the veracity and whether or not it will be successful moving forward. But yeah, as technology moves forward as well too, you would hope that it advances our ability to get the accuracy and consistency of calls down better, and the ability for teams to challenge them as they see fit. Let's keep in mind that the NBA Summer League, again, July 6th to July 17th, the Thomas and Mack Center and Cox Pavilion, in the campus of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV, for those who know the acronym. And hey, man, it's going to be a host of games. It's going to be great. My man Shaw is going to be out there living the life. Hopefully he'll play the slot machines a little bit, get us some of this sponsorship money that we be needing to help elevate the Baseline NBA podcast to Baseline NBA TV.
For real. Yeah, I'll be making my moves and set up a couple meetings, so to speak, but more so catching up with some of our other podcasters and fellow writers in the industry. So be a good time. And, some future collaborations are bound to come through the meeting that I'll have having out there. But more importantly, just want to watch a little basketball, man, and just, enjoy the ambiance and the experience that is Las Vegas Summer League. Be out there with my wife to be and everything like that as well too, man. So we're gonna have a good time doing it up.
All right. Well, there you have it, man. My man getting the drop in Las Vegas. How about that for a change, right?
Oh, yeah. Maybe I'll have some breaking news. Have a Shaw bomb.
Oh man,
we'll see what
we're
happens.
gonna have to come up with something. Yeah, there's too many bombs
Yeah,
going
we
on.
will.
We're gonna have to.
Yeah, too many bombs.
Yeah, Shaw shock. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Okay. You're tuned to the Baseline. Cali Ward Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. This was the drop.
Coast to coast.
Time to go coast to coast discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. Out in Phoenix, man, I hear Devin Booker feeling a little salty right now after the release of his best friend, Tyler Ulis. What do we make of the Phoenix Suns making quote-unquote business decisions at the expense of their star player?
Well, I mean, it doesn't really bother me so much that they waived Ulis, but Booker feels like he should have been consulted because it's his best friend on the team. And again, like you said, they made a business decision that's going to help this roster, and they're trying to bring in more notable point guards to help run the offense. So Devin Booker, I don't think it's going to impact him signing there, but it's interesting that Shams put it out there that he's miffed with the organization as a result of Tyler Ulis being let go. It's Tyler Ulis. Come on, let's move on.
Yeah, that's true, but you know what? It's not like we haven't seen this nonsense before. Remember the Morris twins? Just saying. So, look, Markieff, Marcus, players are going to say what they say. I just find it interesting that it's been outwardly now being acknowledged the emotional toll that this does take. I'm not saying that, this is a days of our lives moment or nothing like that, but the fact that we are actually putting that out there, that players are expressing their emotional, perception about how things are being done. And I do think that if you're the Phoenix Suns, you have to remember these things and make sure that you get out in front of it so that it doesn't become a thing like it seems to do on Instagram, Twitter, and other social media platforms. Out in Denver, LeBron James watch in Denver. Talk to me about this one, Shaw.
Oh, this is amazing. The Denver Nuggets, after re-signing Will Barton, as we talked about a little earlier.
Props to Denver, though, boy. Listen, you want to be bold? Hey, you know what I'm saying? LeBron watch.
Let's read the tea leaves there, though, a little bit. So they re-signed Jokic as well, too, so he wouldn't be moving in a deal. But when it comes to, trying to do something in order to acquire LeBron, let's say LeBron's like, I'll entertain it, and he ends up needing to do some sort of sign and trade. Well, now you've elevated Barton's salary. You need to kind of help, be some salary filler if that was the case, potentially, to bring LeBron in, bring him on out to the roster. You still have Millsap in that contract as well, too, so maybe do something there. I think the Nuggets are just desperate for star power. They are an interesting roster that I think could complement them in some ways, especially with Jamal Murray and Gary Harris there as well, too. I don't think it has a snowball chance of happening, but I credit them for making the effort.
Yes, I know. The realism is that the Denver Nuggets might be able to land Omari Hardwick for their star power than actually getting LeBron James. But I applaud the Denver Nuggets for actually, exactly, I applaud the Denver Nuggets for actually putting their name in the threshold of these things. You wish that other teams would just do it, just for the sense of upping the ante a little bit, shaking the trees, shaking the tea leaves out a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Instead of sipping it all the time. All right, out in Minnesota, it sounds like Minnesota is ready to, or is about to, or in the process of, when the time comes, Jimmy Butler will be offered the max contract extension. No duh.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see if he takes it, because I think he would be better off coming to free agent like most players would, and then just re-signing per se, as opposed to take an extension right now. I think it just goes to show Tibbs wants to have his guy now that after he was let go in Chicago and how that happened. He loves him some Jimmy Butler, so he wants to make sure he keeps him around as long as he's going to be there as well, too.
All right, and finally, Shaw, Amari watch. Amari Stoudemire, playing in the Big Three, says that he will plan to play in Israel again come next season, and then we'll make sure that he has that opt-out clause for a return to the NBA if an NBA team is obviously interested in bringing his talents back to the States.
Hey, Amari, good for you, bro. I really like it. Hey, he's one of the all-time, just great personalities, I think, in the league. He's definitely evolved as a person and become very spiritual in the latter years of his career. So him going out into Israel and playing there while he's, finishing up the Big Three, I think is going to be fun. I don't know that an NBA team is going to come calling, but it's always nice to make sure that you have those options, right?
Yeah. Listen, hey, look, if Anderson Varejao found a roster, Kendrick Perkins found a roster spot in the NBA, at least we can physically see Amari Stoudemire playing basketball to legitimize the idea that if he actually wanted or is being selected to come back to play, that somebody has something that validates that notion. So I can't be mad if he is actually offered a contract to come play in the NBA, at least because I've seen him actually put the basketball in the hoop, rather than some players who like to be tripping on other basketball players while they're playing hoop. Once again, Shaw, awesome show. A lot of stuff happening, man. Summer League. We're raising the dead and killing them off again with our re-autopsy reports of the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's just absolutely wild and crazy, brother. It's just absolutely, and we're not even out of the month of July already, man. It's just nervous already when we're talking about this NBA action, bro.
No, it really and truly is, and it's great to be able to go here and dive into these conversations that have occurred in a very, very short amount of time, and some more players that are going to need to be signed and new homes and destinations to kind of shake loose and evaluate. To me, again, the NBA is, I always say, is the gift that keeps on giving throughout the course of the year, the calendar year that is. And this is just no different, man. A lot of great conversation we had today. Cavaliers, talking about previewing Summer League as well too, man. I'm just excited. I can't wait to get out there, and dive into all the other stuff that's going to be going on with the NBA.
Yeah, man. Listen, slot machines and rookie players on fleek, man. That's gonna be your thing, from what it looks like. So, hey, man, have a good time out there in Vegas. Tell Elvis I said what's up.
Which one? I see about 500 of them on the strip.
Well, and listen, I'm sure Joel Embiid will probably be one of those impersonators as well too. But yeah, man, holla at those boys, man. And like more than anything else, man, bring back some good juicy tidbits for us to discuss the next go around on our show.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more moves to be made, some trades, some conversations going to be had. We didn't really touch on it in this show specifically, but listen, we already know that some moves have to be made as a result of some other contracts that have been signed and just some roster construction that doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense. So some people are going to be forced out. We'll see how teams maneuver and create space, or like say match contracts rather, to get some of these other guys into some new destinations as well too, man. I don't think we're done by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to NBA movement outside of even free agency. Some trades are definitely coming our way too.
Most definitely. So once again, man, we'd like to thank you and yours for hopping on board with us and riding this roller coaster that is the free agency of the NBA. For the baseline, Cal Lee, Warren Sharp, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. And we'll catch up with you next time.